Next up, we'll talk a little bit about CinemaCon. So it's still going on as we're recording this. I think as we're talking about this, they're showing The Flash in its entirety to the live crowd. So I'm curious to see what the reactions are from fans coming out of it, not executives. But we'll talk briefly about Sony and Warner Brothers because we could have split them up, but Sony completely just put half effort into this year, which was super kind of bizarre. And Warner Bros. Had a decent amount to this. So
you could say that they came late to the party.
y'all, Sony came like half an hour late and still finished at the time that they were scheduled to. It's like they had a Spider-Man announcement and then Kevin Feige was like, no, you're not announcing that today. And that was like a good chunk of their report card there that they had to pull at the last second. So Sony, not a lot from this panel. They talked a little bit about Ghostbusters Afterlife. Nothing that we didn't already know. They're like, it's going to take place in New York this time. Going, cool. But characters are coming back. Nothing about the original cast, I don't believe. I don't know if they're coming back or not. But actually, here's where Josh and I will die on the hill together. I don't care if the original Ghostbusters come back. You can bring them all back.
Yeah.
You could just leave Bill Murray there because Bill Murray's kind of a dick, especially in those movies. Like, cool, Ernie Hudson's back, and he's, I'm sure, going to be a big factor in this, especially after the post-credits of the first Afterlife. The one that I want is, why do I always blank on his name? The guy from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah.
Why am I blanking on his name? I need him to... Louis Tully. I know that's the character's name. I just need him to come back because he's just the best. He's just the purest.
Rick Moranis.
There it is. I always forget Rick Moranis' name.
Had to live Google that.
But yeah, they talked about a little bit about Ghostbusters Afterlife sequel. And then it was noticeably absent the Spider-Man stuff. They only talked about one Spider-Man project, Kraven the Hunter. But before we get into that, nothing about Madam Web, even though that's done filming. Nothing about Venom 3, even though we just added some new members to the cast recently, and we know that's coming. Nothing about Spider-Man 4 in the MCU, even though it's like the worst kept secret that that's definitely happening. It's one of those weird times that Sony was the one tight-lipped, and Kevin Feige's the one that's been talking about the project. It was bizarre that they didn't announce anything. El Muerto with Bad Bunny. Nothing from that. But no, they decided to focus on Kraven the Hunter. And boy, did they drop a bunch of juicy details. Kraven the Hunter will be rated R, to which everyone's going, oh? Excuse me? I think, maybe it's just me speculating here, I think this definitively puts a nail in the coffin of Tom Holland ever showing up in this universe.
I agree.
I think once Venom showed up at the end of Venom Let There Be Carnage in the MCU and then immediately got booted back to that universe without ever coming in contact with Spider-Man, just to drop off a little bit of stuff and then never to have contact. I think that was Kevin Feige's not so subtle way of saying, screw you, you're never coming into my universe. Like, you're allowed to exist over in this corner here, but the jellies and the peanut butter aren't going to touch in this circumstance here. We're not going to cross our streams. So I think Sony at that point was like, all right, screw you. We'll make them R-rated then. Because the thing with Venom has always been, we want to keep it PG-13 so we can cross it over with Spider-Man at some point. I think that's not a possibility anymore. I think Kevin Feige's just like, no, this is the one thing in my universe that I'll put my foot down on. We're not crossing over with your trash. No offense to those that like the spunk universe, so they're calling it. But they're not the highest of quality. But Kraven the Hunter, from everything they were talking about, sounds interesting. They said it was very from the people that were there. They said it was brutal and violent. The trailer that they showed, very hard R. And who shows up at the end? But the Rhino, to which Josh brings up a great point that we're all kind of thinking: which Rhino are we talking about here?
Yeah, especially because it's phrased like, and then a guy transforms into the Rhino. Okay, cool. First of all, that's not really a thing the Rhino does.
Nope.
So you've already lost me on that. Now, if we get a situation where it is a permanent like we get a flashback to like a permanent when he like was turned into the Rhino. That's cool, but like just the way that it's phrased is very, very confusing. To use Paul Giamatti, I'm fine with that as long as it's not that stupid robot Rhino. I hate that thing so much.
Yeah.
I will say if you use Paul Giamatti, it just confirms all this is happening in Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man universe. So there's that, but I don't think I think Andrew said that he would never come back. He doesn't want to come back, but who knows? There's an option for a story there. But it's very interesting that they are now, after 2 Venom movies, finally going to rated R. Not like Let There Be Carnage would have been your perfect opportunity there, but whatever, man. Kraven the Hunter.
It's not like Carnage is an actual serial killer or anything.
Yeah. Sorry. Vegan Kraven the Hunter is going to be rated R. All right, buddy. Whatever you say, man. I still do not know how to feel about this. Give me the teaser trailer and then we'll talk. But like, it is promising that they're going to make it rated R, and it's kind of cool that we're going to see the Rhino in this. Which Rhino is it? Is Scorpion involved as well? I would love to see Scorpion at least once on screen, in a suit. Let me be clear. I know you nerds are out there like, oh, he was in Spider-Man. I don't care. I want him in a suit. Give it to me. We will see what happens. Maybe they're building to something, and that's why they're slowly adding more. But this is Sony, so I have no doubt that they're not building something. I would even argue maybe that Morpheus probably would have benefited. Morbin Time would have benefited from like an R rating, so that they could go as far as they need to with a living vampire like idea. But like,
so
the movie sucks. So
then Morbius could have actually drank real blood instead of fake synthetic blood.
Yes,
so
correct.
I think Kraven. I don't think Rhino will be the main villain, just because he never is. He's a good supporting. If he's a video game character, he's the one that you fight at the beginning of every Spider-Man video game ever known to man. I think the villain for this,
just to get you familiar with the controls.
Yes, basically, this is how you dodge. This is how you swing. I think the villain for this, it's either the villain for this movie or the villain for the sequel. Kraven's half brother, the Chameleon. It just makes sense. I think they already said that he has a half brother in it. Like maybe you could have him and Chameleon being trained together under Russell Crowe, their father, in this. So we already know Russell Crowe's in it. I would not be surprised in this light if Chameleon is the villain and they kind of change up some stuff about him. Like in the comics, Chameleon's a dude that, depending on what iteration you're watching it, is either he makes his own masks and is a master of disguise. He's a little turtley. No, that's a very obscure joke for a certain demographic there. Or other incarnations, he like can change his appearance. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like the super spy in this situation and is like a master assassin to quote unquote make him cooler. But I wouldn't be surprised if Chameleon is the villain for Kraven the Hunter, or in the sequel, like they set it up of like, you were my brother, Kraven. I have the high ground. Please let that be actual lines of dialogue from Kraven 2. Which leads us to the Warner Brothers panel, where they actually announced stuff, but not nearly as much as we were expecting. Primarily because maybe we had our hopes up for some DC stuff, but not a ton of new stuff. David Zaslav came out and apparently gave this big rousing speech about how the future is theatrical, and they said Warner Brothers is not really interested in direct-to-streaming movies anymore. I'm going, good. You just look at all the money that you make by not putting your movie on streaming first. Super Mario Brothers, as it's about to cross $1 billion this week or next week.
Yeah, baby.
And then, to the surprise of a lot of people, myself included, they announced that Beetlejuice 2 is actually happening. Now, I don't love the first Beetlejuice, but Beetlejuice 2 is one of those things that Facebook is the home of the god-awful fake movie posters that you see every once in a while from your one person and your friends list that only sees like 3 movies a year. And it's just like, I saw this poster on Facebook. That means it's real. And it's almost always a Beetlejuice 2 poster. And for years, I've just been like, guys, we're not getting Beetlejuice 2. Well, now we are. Those posters are still garbage and 100% fake. Use some deductive reasoning here, people. It's either Beetlejuice 2 Or we're getting a High School Musical 4 with all the original cast. Are you that dumb? Really?
No, we're not.
And then they like the
Yeah, there's no way we are.
the quote unquote trailer that they show is just recycled footage from the first 3 movies. I'm going,
Yes.
these movies that you claimed you've memorized. It's the whole side tangent we can go down that road, but we're not going to. Sticking on the somewhat horror train, they announced another Conjuring movie. If this was 2013, I'd be really excited. This one's going to be called The Conjuring: The Last Rites, which I'm going, cool. Please let this be the last of the franchise, please.
Does that mean, this is the last? Please let it be the last one. Let us move on from this series.
It's gonna be
please.
It's gonna be like Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter of like they say it's the final, and then they're just like, nah. If it makes money, we're totally gonna just go in a different direction with it.
The Attack on Titan final season is now in its part, like fourth part now. It's like, dude, your final season is literally 4 seasons long, so I don't know what you're doing here.
And then they announced Final Destination 6. So I'm conflicted because I actually really like the Final Destination movies. That should come as a shock to no one. They're crappy 90s and 2000s horror movies. Of course I love them.
Yeah.
And also Final Destination 2 has burned and scarred a whole generation of children into not wanting to drive on highways anymore. Like, even people that haven't seen those movies are just going, oh yeah, isn't that a thing from Final Destination? I'm just going, yes, it's one of the greatest kills ever of a person just getting blasted by a log in the face. That being said, I do, but I don't want more. I think the premise for Final Destination has always been super interesting, of like someone that just avoids death, and death kind of going, no, I come to collect one way or another, and also kind of potentially hinting at Tony Todd's character might be death itself. That's always kind of how I interpreted it. But the last Final Destination kind of ended the franchise in one of the greatest ways to end a franchise ever, and I'm not being hyperbolic with that. I think how they finished up the last one, I think it was Final Destination 3D, is genius. So spoiler alert for those that haven't seen it. All of Final Destination 3D, which came out, I believe, in 2011, you think that the movie is set in 2011 until the final scene when all the characters that survive the movie are getting on the exact same plane as the characters in the original Final Destination movie. Surprise, surprise. It was set as a prequel to that first movie. And they actually do sprinkle in some hints every now and then, like characters using old cell phones, big, huge computers, but you're not paying attention to that. And so actually, like, is a closed loop. It ends the circle perfectly. I'm going, that's perfect. That's how you end a story. That's great. Now we're getting more because Hollywood. I'm still excited just because I like Final Destination. They always get very, very clever. They're like Saw, except if I liked the characters slightly more and was a little more creative with its kills. They're still gory and violent, but I don't feel like it's as gratuitous as it is with Saw. How many have you seen all the Final Destination movies?
Oh yeah. Okay. I saw Final Destination 5 in theaters. So
really,
yeah.
Do you want more? Or are you just like, I'm good?
I see, and I'm conflicted as well because they do close the loop very, very, very well. Even as someone who was not super familiar with the series, when I saw, because oddly enough, the 5th one was also my first in typical Josh fashion. But like, I'm gonna hit myself later for saying this, and I think you're gonna be surprised. We need horror schlock again.
Darn right we do.
Like, I've never thought I'd be the person to say this, but every single horror movie that's come out in the last 5 years has tried to be the next thing.
As much as
do the next big thing,
or the thing.
As much as I hate it, as much as I detest old, 90s schlock slashers, they're a lot of fun, and we need more stuff. We need to get back to that kind of like that filmmaking, and so that when we do make stuff like a Conjuring, or it feels bigger, it feels like it's taken more seriously, because it's not just like, well, The Conjuring came out and then 20 different movies copied The Conjuring. So it's like, okay, whatever.
As much as Josh and I love the Vavitch, not every horror needs to be the Vavitch. Sometimes you need a
Agreed.
chopping mall. Sometimes you need an Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Just because it's fun to have a diversity of horror.
Yes, I agree.
Speaking of things that might end up being horrifying, we got a little bit about Timothy Chalamet's Wonka. They haven't released a trailer or anything to the general public, but they announced that Hugh Grant will be playing an Oompa Loompa, to which I'm just going, so you're going for all of the Oscars this year, aren't you? I'm not gonna lie, this is one of my most anticipated movies of the year because of my immense love for the book.
Mm-hmm.
But this leaves me scratching my head, and then it dawns on me just now as I'm saying this. The only reason that not Hugh Jackman, that would be awesome. Hugh Jackman is a Oompa Loompa. The only reason Hugh Grant was cast as an Oompa Loompa is because this is the same guy that directed both the first two Paddington movies, starring Hugh Grant.
Proud of you.
In the second one. Yes, because the first one's Nicole Kidman. The second one is Hugh Grant. And again, watch the Paddington movies. If you don't believe me, according to Pedro Pascal, it's one of the greatest movies ever made. So there's that.
Oh man.
But yeah.
I see. This is going to be absolutely horror inducing. Nightmare inducing. However, I like the idea of not all of the Oompa Loompas looking exactly the same, because they're not. As long as we're not pulling their description directly from the book, I think we'll be okay. But I like the idea of them not doing what the past couple of movies have done, which is just like take one guy and plaster his face over all of them. Well, let me take that back, because even the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, all of the Oompa Loompas for the most part look differently as far as
they're all
facial
different
structure
actors,
and stuff like that. That is not the case in the Johnny Depp one, but that is not the least of its problems. But yeah, it's gonna be so weird. I hope that it's a situation that is you can only catch it if you do a rewatch. I hope it's not, or it's a Daniel Craig and Star Wars kind of thing where it's like, hey, that's that Oompa Loompa right there. That's Hugh Grant. And then you as an audience member could be like, whoa, that's crazy. Okay, that's really fun. But not like all of a sudden there's an Oompa Loompa next to Wonka going like, hey man, I'll take the giant blueberry away. And you're like, that why did Hugh Grant just show up?
So my guess is that
what is happening?
My guess is that Hugh Grant is going to play the head of the Oompa Loompas. Since we know this is a prequel, I bet you he's the head of the Oompa Loompas that Wonka has to convince to come join his factory. Like he's the leader of the people trying to avoid the Hornswogglers, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And Swanglers.
Yeah, I was about to say it can't be Hornswogglers because Hornswoggle is a wrestler, and that's immediately where my mind goes. Although I would love to see cast him as a Oompa Loompa, please. I can make it work.
Okay. So I have a vision in my head now, because you keep confusing Hugh Grant with Hugh Jackman, of them doing a a 22 Jump Street kind of credits where they just have a bunch of different movies with Oompa Loompas in them, and one of them's like a Wolverine ripoff, and Hugh Jackman is a Oompa Loompa playing Wolverine, and that's so funny to me.
Lastly, they touched briefly on DC stuff, but not a ton. Again, I think they're mainly going to wait until the latter half of the year, until most of the DC movies have come out, before announcing new stuff. Just be like, we know you don't really care about this stuff in 2023 because we're going to burn it all down anyway, so we're going to try and focus on these. And, reports of Aquaman not being particularly great, they might want to focus attention away from that. But they talked briefly about Aquaman, basically kind of confirming some things we already knew, while also dropping some new stuff. They said Aquaman will be teaming up with Orm to fight Black Manta, who has a black trident. This time I'm going, okay, cool. You going to kill Mara for us in this movie, please? That's all I ask. Just because she sucks as a character and as a human being. And then they talked briefly about Blue Beetle. You know, the movie that they're totally not going to leave out to die. We swear. We swear it's good. We swear this is the start of the new DC universe. Except if it sucks and it bombs, in which case, that one's going to get thrown by the wayside like we did with Shazam. But basically, I like that they kind of joke with it. They're just like, yeah, Jaime's family is going to know that he's a superhero because you try keeping a secret from a Hispanic family and going, okay, this is clearly written
fair.
by a Hispanic director. That I'm just like, he knows that the family is going to be at the core of everything. Josh and I are super excited for this movie. Surprised it didn't drop anything new, like even if it was just like a new minute-long trailer or just talk that extensively about it. Still makes me nervous about this movie, but I'm hoping for the best with Blue Beetle and they don't just leave it out to dry.
Yeah, at the very least, I'm hoping that even if it kind of isn't as good as we hoped it would be, it at least puts Blue Beetle into the consciousness of the mainstream of people being like, oh, okay, I'm aware now of this Hispanic superhero kid. That's exciting. Aquaman 2, still nervous about it. Still kind of wish we, at the very least, got some screenshots or even like a teaser or something. I know it's not till later in the year, but gosh, dude, I've never wanted to get through a year of movies so fast.